Hi everybody, thank you for attending our webinar. I'll pass over to David to introduce Skooler in the webinar.
Thanks, Helena, and I forgot to add you to the introduction slide, so my apologies. So my name's David Langridge. Thank you very much, everyone, for attending this webinar today, joint webinar between Skooler and Overt Software. As you can see, the meeting's going to be recorded, so feel free. We'll send this to you afterwards, so you can then also watch it at your leisure or to refresh your memory. So please don't hesitate, and you can then share that as much as you want to. Of course, any questions, then do come back to me. Email addresses, etc., will be made available at the end of the session. So without further ado, let's dive into the system. So that's me. So what we're going to do from an agenda perspective, just give you a bit of an introduction to Overt Software, those that are not familiar with Overt, and then of course Skooler. Going to cover off who we are as a company, why we've launched mConnect, why it's been running now for a couple of years, or almost 3 years. Actually, it is 3 years, and why we've done this together with Microsoft. And then covering off key ways to improve your organizational capability using this combined solution to actually connect your Moodle system to Microsoft Teams, and how it's very much a better together story. Actually show you what it actually looks like. So look at it from the education side initially, so covering off what it actually looks like on screen, and then also covering it from an IT perspective. Don't worry, I'm not deeply technical, so I'm not going to go too deep, but really just to highlight how easy it is to actually administer and deal with the whole mConnect solution. Then going to cover off their 5 key points for upgrading to Moodle 4.1, and then there'll be a Q&A and an offer at the end. So Sam, the floor is yours. Explain a bit about Overt Software, please.
Yep, thank you, David. So just to let you know who we are, Overt Software Solutions was co-founded all the way back in 2010. We have a strong foundation in the education sector, having led and been key contributors to innovative projects such as with JISC. HQ is UK based, with experienced technical support teams based in both the UK and in Indonesia. As a company, we've had the privilege of providing our support services nationally and internationally. Overt are specialists in the areas of learning management systems, plugin development, federator, single sign-on, and security functions such as multi-factor authentication. So in my case in particular, as the VLE operations manager, I have a lot of experience working with Moodle, which we'll cover later on, as David has just explained. And our ethos is of exceptional services and honest expert advice, which can be clearly seen for our worldwide community involvement. We're also proud to share that the company has earned the Cyber Essentials Plus and recently the ISO 27001 accreditations. So I think if I just now hand it back to David, and I'll go for my points later on with you. Thank you very much, David.
Skooler as a company were founded in Norway in 2015. I know I don't sound overly Norwegian. That's because I'm not, because I'm British. Based in the UK office, and the company itself is based in a little place called Moss, which is on the outskirts of Oslo. We very much focus on education. That's all we do. We very much develop services for students, for parents, lecturers, IT and school leaders, but it's all education based. We very much in what we're doing here is want to help connect teachers and lecturers and students to actually support the whole collaboration journey using technology within Teams, etc. And but very much make it much more usable in how people like to work. The company itself got offices in Norway, US. Our US offices are very close to Microsoft's campus. We work very, very closely with Microsoft, and of course UK and also in Sweden. Given the nasty pandemic that we've all suffered, we are very much serving and supporting customers worldwide. I would probably say before the pandemic, we were very much sort of Scandinavia, European based. We then sort of did start to establish in the late sort of 2018, 2019, a base in the US and started to have some customers there. but very much the pandemic really kick-started everything for us as far as mConnect's concerned, and we've got customers dotted across the globe as far as this solution's concerned. There is a huge demand. Collaboration, as we know, is here to stay. That the pandemic really probably in some strange way assisted that, purely because people wanted to operate in a hybrid situation where some people were working remotely, and so very much collaboration and being able to be better connected to your peers and to other people within an organization is very much what you're looking to do. But organizations have found they need better tools to actually help with that element. And really, I would say that even if you're working very much in an item today which isn't remote or isn't hybrid anyway, where everything is done more in class, this solution still helps immensely because there's so many more benefits of being able to use a good collaboration tool like Teams completely connected to your Moodle environment. The nice thing is that this very much keeps all of your investments in Moodle. It's not a case of dispensing with Moodle. Moodle is very much front and center and is how all the system is generated and devised and then linked, etc., between systems. And we've got tens of thousands of customers that have downloaded mConnect since it launched in April 2020. So it was launched literally at the start of the pandemic. It's one of those strange quirks. It is fully supported by Microsoft. Microsoft actually asked us to build this for them. They were concerned they had an awful lot of Moodle customers out there that weren't really that well connected to environments like Teams. They did build their own solution back when I used to work for Microsoft, because I was Microsoft prior to joining Skooler in 2017. And they very much sort of reached the end of the road with that particular solution. They'd sort of sold off the support to another organization, and they wanted us to build something that was more fit for purpose to actually then devise this today. And we do have regular meetings with Microsoft to talk about further enhancements, etc. And so you can get access to this from standard Microsoft Education Portal. Of course, you can download it from the Teams App Store, and it talks about it on their various different websites. We've got a number of customers, both large and small, universities, colleges, etc., that work very closely with us as far as this, and as I said, dotted all around the globe. So typically, a lot of people today work in two disconnected systems. And one of the challenges you've got, or you always had in education, and I've been working in the education sector since 2003, is this isolated islands of knowledge, where you've got your system such as Moodle, and you're then trying to do some collaboration in tools such as Office, Microsoft 365, etc., to then get those two connected to actually then provide a good linkage between the two to actually get the best of both worlds. So a lot of people today very much have got systems that are disconnected, and we're trying to help make it a more connected environment. So what we've done is we, as you see on the slide, believe that working connected is a better way of doing it. So what we've done is we've devised a system called mConnect, which allows you to utilize Moodle to actually then create an associated team for its Moodle environment. And so here you've got TAM's Global Economy course, and what it's doing is you're running running the Moodle environment as an iframe within the Teams environment. So yes, Teams becomes the main jump point, if you like, but you're running Moodle from within that Teams area and from within its associated Teams course, course for that Moodle course that you're looking at. So the whole thing then becomes very connected. And don't worry, I'll show you how this looks on screen in a moment. So 4 key areas that we decided to improve to try and make this very much a collaboration and very much a productivity engine. One workspace was critical for us and for Microsoft, funnily enough. They wanted so that you didn't have to switch between screens. And yes, we all know you can actually have 2 screens set up on a desk, you know, pretty much like I've got in my setup here. But you then need to keep switching between screens to actually look at different screens and the things not connected. So this very much is giving you one workspace. So you can access your Moodle course, your topics, your assignments, calendars, etc., all from within its relevant Teams channel. So very much you stay organized with the tabs, collaborative spaces. So if you've got a situation where you're in Engineering 101 and you want to start a discussion topic about that particular Moodle course, that can be done within its associated team, because you've got everything there within that one screen, if you like. So it makes it much easier. This will then improve huge amount the communication and collaboration, productivity and teamwork that you've got within that particular cohort, within that particular group, within the environment. So things like chat, sharing of documents and files, even things like obviously meetings. You know, you're running in teams. So if you have got a situation where you've got some of your students remotely, they can then, of course, you can set up a Teams meeting for that particular course, and it will tie everything together in the same way. Excuse me. The other thing we wanted to do was provide good level of control and administration to really stop the necessity for a lot of this duplicate of work. So to save time, to avoid the headaches. So you've got approved admins that can gain access to the system, that can set up the courses, that can tie the courses together, and give you a lot more flexibility in how this operation works. And again, I'll go through the administration system so you can see how that works shortly. Of course, simplified sign-in, you know, log into Teams, automatic access into Moodle with single sign-on. So all that, you know, you haven't got to worry about multiple sign-ins, etc. It's all done within one simple login and sign-in detail. So I assume you'd like a look at how the system actually looks. So let me dive into to the demo. So hopefully you can all see that. So I'm running my my Teams environment here. You know, this is standard. I'm running my Skooler system. So my standard Skooler team. So you've got you know, you've got various different teams that we've got here, and then I've got my mConnect ones here. So what I'm looking at on screen is my post screen. So anything I can see within Teams, so anything I do within mConnect logs into the post screen. And I've got access to a number of different tabs. So if I go to my dashboard, of course, it knows I'm already logged in. So this is running my my standard Moodle course. So I can then access. So this is my standard Moodle dashboard. So whatever theme you're running within Moodle itself would then be displayed in this screen. So I can then get to my my Moodle calendar. I can get to my private files, my courses, and here I've got a number of courses. So I've got my History of the Vikings course. Of course, we're Scandinavian, so it's going to be about History of the Vikings, and I'm running Moodle, and it's nothing more exciting than that. Essentially, you've then got access to your Moodle course as an iframe within Teams, but it's running it within with its associated channel within Teams itself. So you're I'm just running everything in my general channel here and as tabs, but you can actually set up as separate channels here as well, should you want. It really depends on how you're wanting to set your system up and how you use Teams and Moodle within your school, college, or university. And so I can get access to all these different elements should I wish to. If I wanted to go and view my my biotechnology course, it loads my course details. You've got actually, this is a good point. You've got two methods of actually displaying the courses. So where I had my dashboard just now, this is very much in iframe mode. So this is running an iframe within the system. So you display pictures, and so it displays everything exactly as you would see if you're running Moodle natively within your system. If I run my biotechnology course, This is in text mode, if you like. This is very much in Teams mode. So this allows you to then see it more in its Teams form, if you like, rather than Moodle form. So you can run it either way. We tend to recommend people running in iframe mode because then you've got familiarity with how you use Moodle today. But you've still got access to the course information, the Moodle calendar, the Moodle feed. You can then see who the faculty and staff are and who the students are, etc., within the particular course. To add a further tab, just to outline how that works. So click on mConnect. It then allows me to select tabs. So for example, and again here, it will pull through just the course details or in an iframe. And it of course depends on whether I've got permission to do this. You know, I've got, this is my demo system, so I've set up certain things. And so here it would then give me a list of my courses. So if I was logged in as lecturer, it would then show me the courses that I'm responsible for, and I can then add those as tabs within the system itself. So that's a nice, easy way of setting this up. As you can see, I'm running Teams, so I can set up my meetings, etc. within here. So if I switch gears and just to show you from a technical perspective, because there's not a lot more to show you on what it looks like within the system, because it is literally running Moodle within the Teams environment. So if we shift gears slightly and just show you how the setup, etc. works, so you can then see how the structure of the system itself works. So this is our management dashboard. And here I'm running, so it's Moodle manage.skooler.com is how you or your administrators at the school, college or university would then run the system. So here you can see that I'm running Skooler. It's based in Norway, and who has set up this system. So we've got some statistics in the middle box here, so we can see how many administrators I've got in the system, number of Azure users. So this is then looking directly at the Azure Active Directory and presenting me with that figure. And then the number of teams I've got within the system, and the number of managed teams, meaning those teams that are managed by mConnect. So you don't have to do everything. It's not a case of, you know, you've got to switch everything across. If you just wanted to do one faculty or one lecturer to trial this, it's very easy to do that and set it up in that particular way. Obviously, we're connected to Microsoft 365, and I can test my connection permissions, etc. here when we're setting the system up. And we've got our account managers or people that are responsible for this. And then we can have our number of different Moodle environments. So if you've got multiple Moodles, they can be connected to one Microsoft 365 tenant quite easily. And as you can see here, I did have two. I've actually deleted this one. But what we see in the majority of our customers is typically they've got a live system and they've then got a demo system or a sandbox environment. And both of those are connected systems, so they can try things out should they wish to. But here you can see our site name is Moodle with our particular web address, and I've got iframe supported and Microsoft 365 sign-in supported. Again, you don't have to. If you don't want to use iframe, you don't have to. It will then bring it more on a text form across, as you saw with that biotechnology course. And generally, most people want to do single sign-on, so they would accept this Microsoft 365 single sign-on. But if you don't want to, you could actually have two separate logins. Again, entirely up to you. You can set this up however you want to. So that's the excuse me, that was the administration screen. We can manage our administrators. So as you saw on that front screen, we've got 8 different administrators. You can have as many or as few as you like. Each have got particular roles as to what they're allowed to do in the system. To click add administrator, you then search for someone and add them into the system. So it's very simple, and obviously you can retract people from being admin if you want to. On the user matching exercise, once you set the system up, you then do this user matching environment. So the summary shows you the number of Azure users, number of Moodle users we've got. So here it's actually looking at your Moodle environment and your Azure Active Directory environment, so your Microsoft 365 environment, and matches those two together. Excuse me. So here I can list my users. So what this allows me to do is to actually show users without a Moodle match or matched users. So again, not everyone within your institution may want to have access to Moodle, so you don't have to link everyone. You decide what you're wanting to do within here, and you can then take a list of exceptions just to make sure everyone's been captured. It might be a little quirk or whatever. And I can then look at my sync history. I can export it if I need to, so I can see that each of these, and this is run on a daily basis, so it then keeps the users active within the environment. So again, to start a user match, I can click on that. And my sync configuration, for those a little bit more technically minded, so essentially this is running a simple cron job, and what it's doing is it's using, in this case, the user principal name in Azure Active Directory and the username in Moodle. But as you can see, these are drop-down menus, so that may not work for how you've got your system set up. This then allows you to very easily select mail, for example, or ID, whatever's most appropriate for you. And the same on the Moodle side, depends on what's going to provide you with the best match. We typically find that these two, i.e. user principal name and username, are the ones that that match the most. You can sort of switch off the domain part should you wish to here as well. Again, so there's lots of flexibility. But when we work with you on excuse me, on setting up the system, we can then cover that that particular thing off as to what provides you with the best match. So as the user matching. Then we've got batch team creator. Now, as this name implies, it actually allows you to create your teams in batches. We can have, and I'll go to this last tab first, so we can have a number of different templates. So these templates, and you can see I've got Matt's default template here, I've got a test template, and I've got ones down at the bottom here without channels or without course tabs. So again, it depends how you use Teams how you use Microsoft Teams within your institution as to whether you set up as channels and or as tabs. So you can set these up. So you might have certain professors or lecturers that like to use Teams in a particular way, and they always use channels, and so you can actually set it up to use channels or to use tabs, entirely up to you. If I show you a new template, this is the sort of thing you can do, and what this is doing is it's creating the team for you based on a set of criteria. So you haven't got to go in and do lots of switches and checks and balances and changes and things once you've got your system set up. So, you know, what can members do? Can they create and update channels? Can you do you allow users to edit messages? And so you can then switch all these different options on and off. And then the ones down the bottom left-hand corner here, have you got co-teachers? Do you want to set them up as owners? Because you need an owner within the team. That typically is the lecturer or the professor. And they would then, you might have a teaching assistant, or you might have 2 or 3 people that run that particular course, and you can set them all up as owners as you want, or just the main person. And then do you want to create channels from your course topics? So again, depends on how you got your Moodle set up, depends on how you want to set up teams. You could then create channels from course topics or course groups. And these are very simple, a case of, you know, you can switch these, toggle between the two because it's one or the other. And obviously I can switch them off. And then do you want to create tabs in iframe style in the general channel? So again, you've got some flexibility there, and based on a particular Teams template that you pick. So that's the template management. You click on search and create. This is where the real work is done, if you like. So if I click on tests, I'm just going to search for a particular set of courses. And the reason for picking test is it ably displays a number of different items for me to explain how the system itself works. So at the moment, I can filter this based on Teams and Moodle courses, or I can just select only Teams or only Moodle courses. So in the initial setup, you would probably pick Moodle courses, only Moodle courses. It would then allow you to go and be very specific. So give me a particular faculty, etc., and then create all of your teams from those particular Moodle courses, or you can do them one by one. It's entirely up to you as to how you want to do it. You can then categorize your things. So, you know, my mathematics, my language art, my engineering, whatever your categories are. I can look at active ones, archived ones, or deleted ones. So you've got the ability to go back into the archive should you want to. And also, are they managed by mConnect or not managed by mConnect? So again, when you're doing this as part of an exercise, if you want to just find the ones that aren't managed by mConnect to then select some of those for transferring to Teams, you can then do that. So what we've got here is we're trying to keep it as simple as possible. So we've got a course here, just a Moodle course. So that is in nice orange, and the Teams logo and the mConnect logo are grayed out. And so this one's queued, ready to be created, essentially. This is a Teams course, so there's a team here, but there's not a Moodle course for it. So you might have already been proactive. You might have already got some teams notionally set up, which are similar to your Moodle courses. What this allows you to do is then go in and actually link a course. So I can now link a Moodle course to this team and create that intrinsic link between the two. It'll then do all the checks and balances, make sure the users are correct and the owner's correct, etc. And so it allows me to, and again, I can search for particular, so if I searched for test here, and it would then give me each of my courses with test in the name, and I can then go and select this one, and that will then link that particular Moodle course to that particular team that I've created, and it will then be managed by mConnect. And you can see we've got one here which is completely linked. So there's a team for it, there's a Moodle course for it, and it's an mConnect managed one. And then you can see this one, I can then archive the team. So come the end of the semester or the end of the academic year, depends on how you do your archiving, you can then start to archive this. So it deals with all the drudgery and administration of how this system is managed. And you then talk to us and potentially to Overt on how you want all this set up, so it's all set up in the correct way. I can then view my my team creation history, and you can see that one that's queued, and I can then delete that, and I can look for stuff that's in progress or failed or succeeded, and I can then get a list of all those things and what template's been used, because when you then create that batch, you then select which template you want it to use to then go create the teams. I can also get access to the membership sync from here as well. Logical place to give access to that. So there's two different places you can get access to that membership information. And then your batch team archiver. So this allows you to then archive your items. So I can search for things and archive them. So I can actually filter based on my active courses, of course. Search for a particular text, and then I can batch archive, and I can then look at the archive history should I wish to. And so this is showing me essentially again the number of teams, number of managed teams, number of archive teams. So and again, click on this will then give me those teams that have been archived, and I can then look at if anything's failed, for example, in the system for whatever reason. In my case, all of it has succeeded. And that pretty much is it. Hopefully you liked that particular overview. The system itself, I can spend longer on going through different bits and pieces, but want to be conscious of time today. But hopefully you've got a nice overview of how the system itself looks, and also then how the system itself is run from an administration perspective. We've got a free version and a paid for version. The free version is limited to 1,000 users, 100 teams, and 30 days. So it's like a trial version, and then you go onto the full version potentially. So we can set up that trial quite easily. So Sam, back to you to talk through the key points for upgrading to Moodle.
Yep, thank you very much, David. So I quite like seeing that overview, since that's working from a perspective I don't usually get to see, because some of our customers do use mConnect. So now I will just cover 5 tips that we hope will be helpful to you for the upgrade process from Moodle 3 to 4. It's quite important, as Moodle will be Moodle 3.9 will be end of life early December, with the next long-term support version being 4.1. I'm going to try to keep this quite general as an overview of what to be aware of, rather than getting too tied into the details, to try and keep things widely applicable for the many different use cases you have with Moodle. So if you have any particular questions about sort of an aspect of what's changing in Moodle 4.1, that's something I'm sure we can cover towards the end of the presentation. So if we just get straight into it, I think if you can move me on to the next slide, David, please.
Well, I can do that.
Yeah, thank you very much. So before I get into the actual details of the upgrade, it's important to go over the support timelines. So it's useful to know sort of how Moodle manages its upgrade processes, if you don't know already, in terms of how it manages its versions. So you have security patches, you have the major branch versions, and then you sort of have Moodle 3 and 4. So 3.9 was the last long-term support version of Moodle, which, as I said earlier, will be expiring towards early December. So if I remember correctly, the latest subversion of that is 3.9.20. So it's quite possible we'll see 3.9.21 or 3.9.22 or so on until that 11th of December date, at which point that will stop. And of course, that means over time, potential security vulnerabilities or other issues may sort of creep in if you remain on that version, which is why upgrading is, of course, quite important. But that's fairly standard, and I'm sure you're aware of that sort of as a general sort of rule with software. So what long-term support means, sort of as the name implies, it's the version that's going to be supported for a longer period of time, even past some of the later versions. So if you see in the graph at the bottom right, that's the currently supported Moodle versions, and you'll see that 3.10 is absent, because I believe 3.10's support expired last year, I think around towards the end of the year. So that's an important sort of detail to keep in mind with your strategy for keeping Moodle up to date. It's quite possible that going forward, going to Moodle 4.1, you'll want to stay on that rather than going to 4.2 or 4.3, because as again, you can see in the graph, 4.1 will retain its security support until December 2025, whilst 4.2 will be losing its security support in 2024. So in terms of why staying on an LTS version may be better, it's likely to be more stable and less disruptive in terms of changes in testing. So obviously, when you're upgrading from Moodle 4 to 4.1 or 3.9 to 4.1 or so on, you're going to want to test and ensure that you're not going to have any unexpected issues come up with plugins and so on. But also, of course, it can mean potential disruption in terms of just little things changing that the users or the students may not sort of understand, and that might also cause issues for you. But on the other hand, you might decide to go for the cutting edge approach and go from 4.1, 4.2 to 4.3 if you just want the sort of the latest and greatest cutting edge version of Moodle. But as I said before, it's important to keep in mind that can mean that things are less stable and you're more likely to see sort of unexpected bugs come in, because it's a constant process with development. So in general, at Overt, we typically advise, if you can, stay on the long-term support versions, as we find that with most of our customers, that's the sort of preference. It's likely to work out for you better sort of in the long term. So if we can move on to the next slide, please. Thank you very much. So this sort of upgrade from Moodle 3 to 4, it's not going to be as dramatic as some of the previous switches. So for those of you who have been with Moodle for a long time, you might remember the switches from 1 to 2 or 2 to 3, which I have been informed of, were quite dramatic, and they did cause some sort of serious issues, and in some cases required some serious restructuring of how you use Moodle. The primary focus going from 3 to 4 is just more the usability aspects. So in terms of the core principles of Moodle, there are not going to be any major changes, such as how groups, enrollments, or cohorts work. So that hopefully means that any patches needed for related plugins should not be too dramatic. Although, as always, testing is always going to be vital. Just something to keep in mind is primarily you're going to be going to want to ensure that students and users are going to not be too disrupted by any of the changes in the interface with Moodle. Which is where it could be a good idea to consider user guides or even the new user tours feature that was introduced in Moodle 3.9 to sort of introduce people to any of the changes with the Moodle interface. So it might also be an idea to consider UAT testing on your test sites. So something to consider could be that you'll get a batch of students or perhaps some teachers, get them onto your new Moodle 4.1 test site, sort of take them through that and see if there's any sort of particular issues that come up. You could possibly give them some simple tasks to do on the test site. So maybe you sort of simulate them being enrolled to a new course and ask them to make an assignment submission, see if they have any troubles with that, or if they need to access a particular resource, or if you're using manual or self-enrollments, provide some instructions for them to enroll to a given course and see if any issues come up with that. And then from there, you can look into see if there's any ways of either putting together a user guide or using user tours to make that easier if there's problems that come up, or perhaps you could make CSS changes, or as an Overt customer, contact us and we can look into if there's a way of making that easier for your users. So if we move on to the next slide, please. So yeah, testing, as I mentioned before, is going to be indispensable. So setting up in particular with the UI and UX changes, the existing themes for Moodle will also be changing significantly. So some themes such as Forwardson will not support Moodle 4. So that's something to consider. You may need to be switching to a new theme. For Forwardson's particular case, there is the LearnR theme, which the Forwardson developers have moved on to. Another big theme that I'm aware of that a lot of people use and is very useful is the adaptable theme. That one also has had some significant changes made to it that you'll want to inspect on Moodle 4.1 on your test site. So that's something to keep in mind. And also, of course, with themes, you may also need to apply or remove or reapply any of your customized CSS or HTML changes that you've used if that's a functionality of Moodle that you've made use of. In particular with upgrading adaptable, if you fail to upgrade adaptable to the 4.1 version and try to move on to Moodle 4.1, that can result in it giving you some errors that will stop the site from being accessible. So that's definitely something to keep in mind with the live upgrade from Moodle 3.9 to 4.1 or so on. To ensure that all of your plugins are still going to be working. And in the same vein, it's also a good time to consider which plugins that you still have in place, because you may need to audit your existing plugins and to remove ones that are either no longer needed or are no longer going to be compatible, and then consider, do any of these plugins need to be replaced, or can we get by with something else, or is there now core functionality that will replace that? So you'll need to keep that in mind too. So if we move on to the next slide, please. Yeah, so alongside the shift from Moodle 3 to 4, that also comes with PHP 8. So PHP 7.4 has been out of support for a while now. So it's definitely a good idea to consider either moving on to PHP 8 or PHP 8.1. Especially as the newer versions of Moodle provide better support with PHP 8 and PHP 8.1. So that's primarily important for security purposes, as no more updates for Moodle 7.4 are going to be carried out. So that means any potential future vulnerabilities that exist in the PHP 7.4 code will remain, and that can cause you problems going forward. And eventually, if you're still upgrading Moodle but not upgrading PHP, eventually PHP 7.4 is not going to work with the future versions of Moodle. So sooner or later, the upgrade to PHP 8 is going to be necessary. So obviously that seems like quite a technical back-end issue, but it's primarily relevant to you as a sort of from an ILT or VLE sort of perspective in the front end. because upgrading to PHP 8, just as what can happen with upgrading Moodle 3.9 to 4.1, is that might break compatibility with existing and especially old plugins. So it's indispensable to do testing, and it's something to keep in mind, that just as how upgrading to a later version of Moodle may result in a plugin no longer working, also updating PHP can also result in the same thing occurring. So even if you're on the same version of Moodle and deciding that your PHP has to be updated, that can result in something breaking. But the vice versa is also true, where staying on the same version of PHP and upgrading Moodle can also cause plugins to stop working. So in both cases, testing is vital. So for our own customers at Overt, we do set up our new 4.1 test sites to run on PHP 8, just to sort of ensure that both boxes are checked, so that we know that both are going to keep working going forward. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. And as an Overt customer, you are entitled to a free test Moodle with your live Moodle that we can sort of use to do the testing on. So I think if you move on to the next slide, please. So during testing, everybody uses Moodle a little bit differently. Some might be more adult learning services, and some may be more just general colleges or some secondary schools or universities. So it's useful to sort of have an idea of what to test and investigate in testing, and sort of ask yourself questions in summary of what you need to achieve. So is your test site an accurate reflection of your production site? Do you know that all of your plugins work on the new versions? As mentioned earlier, it's now a good time to look at housekeeping. So which plugins are vital, which plugins can be removed, which plugins are sort of nice to have but aren't vital to your work. So in bespoke plugins in particular bespoke plugin cases, you might have a plugin that you've had developed for you, and that's probably more likely to have issues upgrading to Moodle 4.1 in my experience than with the community plugins. The community plugins are generally left up to date, but a bespoke plugin, you might see that that's going to stop working going forward. So you're going to want to ensure that those are still working correctly in your new test site. And alongside that, as mentioned before with the UI and UX changes, there's going to be differences in the site's appearance. So you're going to want to keep in mind, are those likely to confuse the learners or teachers? And this sort of goes back to whether you want to look at doing UAT testing to get an idea of what snags you might see going forward in the future. So if we move on to the next slide, please. So continuing on into the theme of testing, you'll want to also, as well as looking at the courses, which is where your focus is likely to be, also look at site administration and course administration facilities that exist outside of the Moodle courses. So that's sort of site administration, that's going to your themes, that's looking at your groups, your cohorts, all those sort of areas that immediately exist outside of the courses themselves. So basically just click through and make sure that on your new version of Moodle, everything seems to be working correctly and you're not seeing any sort of error screens or anything unexpected come up, because those can all be tied to old plugins that are causing things to break. And then that obviously needs to be investigated and resolved from your technical teams. As mentioned before, UAT is something to consider, depending on your usage of Moodle and how dramatic the changes seem to be going from Moodle 3.9 to 4.1 based on what theme you're using, and how extensively you have your sort of theme customized to your usage. But perhaps the most important thing to consider is what your timelines are. So at Overt, we've been contacting our customers for a while now to start getting people to test Moodle 4.1. Because what we're conscious of is towards the September period, for a lot of people, that's going to be that frantic rush as new enrollments come in and people get started, and that's going to be a likely time for you yourselves to be very busy and not have time to do the testing or to handle doing an upgrade whilst carrying out any support and dealing with any issues that come up. So it's definitely a good idea to try and get the testing done over the summer period and ideally get Moodle upgraded before that September rush period, and give yourself some time in between the end of the summer towards September to sort of look at what what might have been missed during testing, because it's always important to keep a contingency that testing is not always going to be perfect. So you might see that some issues were missed or weren't possible to be tested for. And along those lines, you also want to keep a post-upgrade checklist to give yourself some structure to look at. So are my emails still working? Is my automated course restores, backups and restores still working correctly? Can I restore courses? And so on. So those are the kinds of things you're going to want to be looking at as you're shifting over from Moodle 3.9 to 4.1 on your test sites. So the most important thing to keep in mind is, as mentioned before, 3.9 is end of life in December. So you can delay upgrading if that's going to be a necessity for yourselves. But with the upcoming September rush period, it seems appropriate to try and get this done before then, or to at least look at a time between the end of September towards December to see if you can get upgraded between those two dates. Because once you hit December, you're going to be looking at your Moodle being out of date, and that can cause all sorts of issues of security implications. And if you're a Cyber Essentials or ISO certified organization, that could potentially cause problems with ensuring that you remain compliant with those security procedures. And also, it's just going to mean that sort of over time, you're going to be more vulnerable to security vulnerabilities. So if we move on to, I believe, our final slide now. Yeah. So thank you for listening to my bit of the webinar. I hope the tips provided will prove useful in the coming months. Just so you're aware, Overt will also offer a free LMS health check at the address at the bottom of the screen. So you can either go to the below address, or you can do a quick Google search for Overt Moodle Health Check. And during this health check, we'll be able to cover any potential snags for your Moodle 2 to Moodle 4. So that's both for our customers and for also anybody sort of who's not yet an Overt customer who would like to sort of take a look at what we can provide for them. And we can do a health check with you. So I think if I hand it back over to David now, we can, I believe, go on to the Q&A.
Yeah, thanks very much, Sam. And yes, just in addition to the offer that Overt have made, anyone that does take out the mConnect system, we'll offer one additional month free, and we will do the managed onboarding for you, so we'll actually get you fully operational. And of course, you've always got that 30-day money back guarantee. So if it doesn't suit, then no charge. That simple. So as Sam mentioned, now just down to Q&A. So anyone that wants to reach out to me with regards to mConnect, dl@skooler.com. But yes, I'll open the floor. Has anyone got any questions? And do you need to take them off of mute, Helena? Or you can pop a question in the chat, of course.
There we go. I think I'm just going through and allowing people's mics. So if we can have anyone has a question, just be orderly and civil, and we can, or the chat, that also works.
Yeah, so the let's just call up the chat so I can see what's coming in. Yeah, so as far as mConnect is concerned, up to 5,000 users is €1,250, and above is €5,000. Nice and simple pricing. There is some associated other bits and pieces, if you're wanting it in your local Azure data center. So if you're UK based, if you want a UK data center, at the moment it's everything's stored in Norway, but there is a small extra charge if you want it in the UK data center. If that's of importance to you, then we can do that. But yeah, if you want, Daniel, we can set up another call and we can then talk through different bits and pieces. It's based on Moodle user account essentially. So Rhiannon said, have you noticed any lag issues between using the iframe version of Moodle in Teams versus Unitext version? No, not noticed any major issues. Yes, it does depend on your connection, your pipe into your institution, but no, I've not noticed anything. Any report from any of your existing customers, Sam, with regards to that? But I think that virtually the majority, I think everyone just used the iframe because they want it to look just like the standard Moodle system does. Sam, any comments?
No, I've not had any reports of any lag with using the iframe version. Whenever there's anything technical come in, it's just configuration and then it gets sorted out. So I've not seen anything with latency or performance problems.
Anyone wants to ask a question via the microphone, feel free.
Hi, Colin Susie here from Cardiff Met. Just wanted to ask something about when upgrading to 4.1. With the plugins that support single sign-on. I know we've got some changes going on with the configuration to 0AD. Is that something that we can sort of manage in both 3.9 or 3.11 and 4.1 environments between UAT and production? I don't know if it's more of an overt question.
So is this sorry, is this what's the authentication method you're using for this?
We're using single sign-on with a 0AD. So we got some app registration set up for this. I know I looked into. I know we got some configuration changes that would need to be made for one of the upgrades from the plugins. So I guess what I'm worried about is if we upgraded in pre-prod, that would sort of impact production. I mean, are the configurations sort of confined to the environment you're working on? Would you know?
Yeah. That's quite an interesting question, actually. It's something that I could potentially discuss with our own IDP SSO engineers, and I can discuss the best way of approaching that. So do you mind if you could fire an email over to me, and we can sort of discuss it further, if that's okay?
Yeah, sure. That'd be great. That'd be fine. So, got an email address?
Yeah, I'll just put my email in chat.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah, no worries.
I put my email address in the chat as well. If anyone's got any mConnect questions specifically, or would like some more formal pricing, etc., on mConnect, then just contact me. Any other questions from anyone? Well, look at that, Helena. Pretty much, well, I make that 11:01, so bang on the time that we allocated. So from my side, thank you very much for all of your kind attention. Thanks for listening. And if you want to stop the recording now, Helena, we can then Helena will send off the recording to everyone that's attended the call today and those that were not able to make it. Anything else from either you, Helena, or Sam?
I think just thank you for having us, David. It's been really good.
No problem. It's always great partnering with Overt. No issues at all.
Thank you very much. Oh, it's been a pleasure. Thank you. And thank you everybody for being brilliant guests.
Thanks very much all. Have a good rest of your day. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye.